Chosen one, something has shifted in the spirit the moment you arrived here, and heaven marked this exact second long before you ever pressed play. You did not find this message by accident, anointed one. This is a divine appointment, an unveiling that has been waiting for you to be ready, not just to hear it, but to recognize it. There are moments in life when God pulls back the veil, when what was hidden begins to surface. And Ecclesiastes chapter 3 verse 1 reminds us that there is a time for everything, and this is your time to see who you are becoming. For too long you have measured yourself by what you have been through, by the delays, the silence, the battles that made you question your own identity. But heaven has never defined you by your past. Heaven has been shaping you in secret, preparing a version of you that carries authority, clarity, and divine provision far beyond what you have imagined. And now, anointed one, the transformation is no longer hidden. You are stepping into a version of yourself that will not look familiar because it was designed in places you could not see. Stay with this message, because what you are about to witness is not who you were. It is who heaven has already declared you to become. There is something you need to understand before anything else moves forward. The version of you that you have been judging, questioning, even quietly resenting is not the full truth of who you are. It never was. Chosen one, anointed one. What you've been seeing is only a fragment. A surface-level reflection shaped by experiences that were never meant to define you, only to develop you. And if you're honest, you've had moments late at night in silence, when everything slows down, where something inside you whispered, "There is more to me than this." That whisper was not imagination, it was recognition, because heaven has already seen a version of you that you have not yet fully met. And this is where everything begins to shift. I need you to lean into this moment, not as a listener, but as someone standing at the edge of revelation, because what is unfolding right now is not information, it is exposure. Exposure to a reality that has been forming behind the scenes while you were navigating confusion, disappointment, and delay. There are two versions of you that have been existing at the same time. One is the version shaped by memory, the one that carries the weight of past mistakes, the echo of words spoken over you by people who never understood your calling, the version that looks at limitations and quietly accepts them as boundaries. This version learned to survive, it learned to endure, but it also learned to shrink. And then there is the other version, the one that heaven has been building in silence, the one that does not respond to fear the same way, the one that walks into environments and shifts them without trying, the one whose voice carries authority not because of volume but because of alignment, the one that does not beg for doors to open because doors recognize it and open on their own. This version does not strive for identity. It operates from identity, and when that version begins to emerge, chosen one, people around you will feel it before they understand it. Conversations will change, access will change, even opposition will change, because what once ignored you will now react to you. But here is the truth that many are not ready to accept. That version of you is not something you are trying to become. It is something you have always been becoming. There is a difference. One is effort, the other is unveiling. And this is why your life has felt the way it has, because you have been living in the tension between what you see and what heaven has already established. You thought the struggle meant you were off track. You thought the delays meant you were being denied. You thought the confusion meant you were lost. But what if I told you those were not signs of failure? What if those were signs of construction? Because no one builds something significant in the open. The most important work always happens where it cannot be observed, and that has been your life. You have been in a hidden phase where pieces of you were being reshaped, your thinking, your endurance, your discernment. Even the way you respond to pressure has been under reconstruction. You may not have noticed it in the moment, but if you look back, you are not reacting to things the way you used to. That is not coincidence. That is evidence. There were doors that closed, and at the time it felt like rejection. But later, you realized those doors were leading into spaces that would have drained you, distracted you, or delayed what was actually meant for you. There were relationships that ended and it felt like loss, but over time you began to see that your growth required separation. You were not being pushed out, you were being pulled forward. And I say this as someone who has walked through seasons where nothing made sense on the surface. There were moments where it felt like everything was falling apart at once, plans collapsing, people disappearing, clarity fading. But in those same moments, something deeper was forming that I could not see yet. That is where you are. In between versions. Not who you used to be, but not fully expressing who you are becoming. And that space can feel uncomfortable. It can feel isolating. Because what once felt familiar no longer fits, but what is coming has not fully revealed itself yet. But let me anchor you in something real. 1 John chapter 3 verse 2 reminds us that what we shall be has not yet been fully revealed, which means it is already determined but not yet fully seen. You are not guessing your future, you are uncovering it, and that changes everything, because it means the struggle did not erase your identity. It concealed it until the right time, and that time is beginning now. But before the unveiling fully takes place, there is something deeper you must understand about why your journey has required so much pressure, because what you have gone through was not random and it was not excessive. It was precise. And what comes next will finally show you why. What you're about to recognize now will reframe everything you once called pain. Because the weight you carried was never random, and the intensity you endured was never without purpose. There is a pattern to how heaven prepares what it intends to reveal, and your life has been following that pattern with precision, even when it felt chaotic. You were not being singled out for struggle, you were being selected for transformation. And that selection required pressure strong enough to reshape not just your circumstances, but your identity. Chosen one. There were moments when you questioned why things kept breaking just as they were beginning to make sense. You may remember times when you were finally gaining momentum, only for something unexpected to interrupt it. Opportunities slipped through your hands, relationships shifted without warning, and plans you were certain about suddenly dissolved. In those moments it felt like resistance, like something was working against you. But what you could not see then is what you are beginning to understand now. What looked like disruption was actually redirection. What felt like loss was actually refinement. Because there are certain versions of you that cannot coexist with where you are going, and heaven knew exactly what needed to be removed. Some of those removals came through disappointment. Some came through silence. Some came through situations that forced you to confront parts of yourself you had been avoiding. And I know this may not be easy to hear, but not everything that hurt you was meant to harm you. Some of it was designed to expose what could not continue with you into your next level. You have outgrown more than you realize. That is why environments that once felt comfortable started to feel restrictive. Conversations that once entertained you began to feel empty. Even the way you see people has changed. You started noticing patterns, recognizing intentions, and sensing things before they were spoken. That is not overthinking. That is awareness being sharpened. And awareness always increases before elevation. Because you cannot step into greater authority while still operating with old perception. There is a moment in every transformation where clarity replaces comfort, where you would rather face truth than remain in familiarity. And that moment has been unfolding in your life. You have been seeing things more clearly, even when that clarity came with discomfort. You began to realize that not everything around you was aligned with who you are becoming, and instead of ignoring it, something inside you refused to settle the way it used to. That is growth. That is alignment beginning to take place. And here is what many do not understand about alignment. It often feels like isolation before it feels like elevation. Because before the right things can fully connect to you, the wrong things must lose access to you. And that process can feel like you are being distanced from everything familiar at once. But you are not being isolated. You are being positioned. There is a difference between being alone and being set apart. One drains you, the other prepares you, and what you have been experiencing is preparation at a level that most people would not recognize because it does not look impressive from the outside. It looks like waiting. It looks like stillness. It looks like uncertainty, but internally, something has been shifting in a way that cannot be reversed. You are not the same person who started this journey, even if your external life has not fully caught up to it yet. And that is where many become discouraged, because they expect the change inside of them to immediately reflect outside of them. But transformation does not move that way. It builds internally until it reaches a point where it cannot remain hidden anymore. And when that point is reached, everything begins to shift rapidly. That is where you are approaching now. There is a pressure that has been increasing, and you have felt it, not just in your circumstances, but within yourself. A pressure to move differently, to think differently, to no longer tolerate what you once tolerated. It is subtle, but it is undeniable. You cannot go back to who you used to be, even if you tried. And that is not frustration. That is confirmation. Because when the old version of you begins to lose its grip, it does not happen quietly. There is tension, there is resistance, there is a sense of being stretched beyond what feels comfortable. But that stretching is not to break you, it is to expand your capacity for what is coming. Romans chapter 8 verse 18 speaks to this in a way that most overlook. It reminds us that the present suffering cannot be compared to the glory that will be revealed. Not given, not created, but revealed. Which means it is already there waiting to come into full expression, and that revelation requires space. Space that can only be created by releasing what no longer belongs. So if you have felt things falling away, if you have felt disconnected from what once defined you, if you have felt like you are in a space where nothing fully fits anymore, understand this clearly. You are not lost. You are in transition. You are moving through a phase where the old structure is dissolving so the new structure can take form. And yes, that phase can feel uncomfortable because it requires trust without full visibility. But this is where your strength has been built. Not in the moments where everything made sense, but in the moments where you chose to keep moving forward even when it did not. That is what separated you. That is what prepared you. That is what qualified you for what is about to unfold. And what is about to unfold will not match the version of you that people have become familiar with. Because you are stepping into something that has been developing beneath the surface this entire time. But before that emergence becomes visible, there is still one more layer of understanding you need to receive. Because what you are feeling right now, this pressure, this separation, this internal shift, is not just preparation. It is the signal that transformation has already begun. What you are feeling now is not random, and it is not temporary. It is the beginning of evidence. Not loud evidence, not something the world can easily recognize yet, but internal confirmation that something irreversible has already been set into motion. Because transformation does not announce itself with noise. It begins in quiet shifts, in subtle changes that only you can feel before anyone else can see. Chosen one. This is where many people misinterpret their own process. They expect transformation to feel empowering from the start, but in reality, it often begins with discomfort. It begins with a sense that something is no longer right, even if you cannot fully explain why. You start to feel disconnected from patterns that once felt normal. You notice that your tolerance for certain conversations, certain behaviors, certain environments begins to decrease. It is not because you are becoming distant, it is because you are becoming aligned. There is a difference. Alignment will always require separation before it produces elevation, and this is the stage where that separation becomes undeniable. You may have already experienced moments where you found yourself in familiar spaces, yet nothing about them felt the same. You were present physically, but internally something had shifted. The conversations did not resonate. The energy felt different. What once held your attention now felt empty. That is not confusion. That is awareness, adjusting to a new level of identity. Because when your internal standard changes, your external tolerance follows. You are no longer drawn to what you once needed. And that realization can feel isolating if you do not understand what is happening. You may wonder why you no longer fit where you used to belong. Why the connections that once felt natural now feel strained. Why your interests, your focus, even your desires are shifting without your control. But this is not loss. This is refinement. This is your life being recalibrated to match what is ahead of you, not what is behind you. And recalibration always feels uncomfortable at first, because it removes familiarity before it introduces clarity. There is also something else you may have noticed, something more subtle, but just as significant. Your appetite has changed, not just physically, but mentally, emotionally, spiritually. The things that once entertained you no longer satisfy you. Distractions that once consumed your time now feel like interruptions. You find yourself wanting something deeper, something more meaningful, something that actually aligns with purpose rather than just passing time. That shift is not random, it is activation. Because when your identity begins to evolve, your desires begin to follow. You cannot crave what you once craved when your nature is changing. It becomes impossible to remain fulfilled by things that were only designed for a previous version of you. And this is where many become confused, because they try to hold on to what no longer feeds them while stepping into something that requires a completely different mindset. But you cannot carry old appetites into new levels. You cannot build something greater while still being satisfied with what kept you small. And this is why the shift feels so strong. Because it is not just about external change, it is about internal reprogramming. The way you think is changing. The way you respond is changing. The way you process situations is changing. You are becoming more intentional, more aware, more selective. Not because you are trying to be, but because you cannot help it anymore. It is happening automatically. And then there is the pressure. You have felt it increasing, not always in a way you can explain, but in a way you cannot ignore. Pressure in your circumstances, pressure in your thoughts, pressure in the decisions you are being forced to make. It feels like everything is demanding more from you at the same time. More clarity, more strength, more discipline, more patience. And if you are not careful, you might interpret that pressure as opposition. But it is not opposition. It is compression. And compression is necessary before expansion, because nothing grows into its full form without first being pressed into a new shape. There is a reason why the process feels intense right before something changes. It is because the old structure is breaking down to make room for something entirely different. Not an improved version of what was, but a completely new expression of who you are. This is where the metaphor becomes real. You are not being adjusted. You're being transformed. And transformation is not gentle. It requires breakdown before it produces breakthrough. That is why this phase feels the way it does. Because parts of you that once felt permanent are losing their grip. Habits that once controlled you are weakening. Thought patterns that once repeated without question are being interrupted. Even the way you see yourself is shifting sometimes without your permission. That is not instability, that is reconstruction. 2 Corinthians chapter 5, verse 17 speaks to this clearly. It tells us that the old has passed away and the new has come, not gradually, not partially, but completely. Which means the version of you that once operated under limitation is no longer the version that is meant to continue forward, and you are beginning to feel that separation internally. There are moments now where you catch yourself thinking differently, responding differently, even seeing possibilities where you once saw obstacles. Those moments may seem small, but they are significant, because they are glimpses of the version of you that is emerging. And those glimpses will become more frequent. You may also begin to notice something else. Moments where you can almost see yourself differently, not in a physical sense, but in a vision sense. You start imagining yourself operating at a level you have never fully experienced before, speaking with confidence you did not have before, moving with clarity that once felt out of reach. Those are not random thoughts. They are previews. Because heaven will always show you what you are becoming before you fully step into it. Not to confuse you, but to prepare you. To make sure that when the moment comes, you recognize it instead of resisting it. And that is what is happening now. You are being shown pieces of your future self so that you can begin to align with it before it becomes your reality. But there is something deeper happening behind all of this, something that is not visible, but is just as real as what you are feeling internally. Because while you have been experiencing these changes, there has also been movement taking place in a realm you cannot see. And what is happening there will explain why everything is accelerating now. What you could not see while all of this was unfolding is that movement was already happening beyond your awareness. While you were adjusting internally, while you were questioning, processing, and trying to make sense of the changes within you, there was coordination taking place in the unseen that was aligning with every shift you were experiencing. Nothing about your transformation has been isolated. It has been supported, structured, and timed with precision. Chosen one. There are moments in a person's life when things begin to accelerate, not because they suddenly became more capable, but because something was authorized. There is a difference between effort and authorization. Effort tries to force outcomes. Authorization releases outcomes that were already prepared, and what you are stepping into now is not something you are forcing into existence. It is something that has been released at the right time. You may have noticed this recently. Subtle changes at first. Small openings, unexpected clarity moments where things begin to align without you pushing them the way you used to. It may not feel dramatic yet, but it feels different. There is less resistance in certain areas, less confusion in decisions that once felt complicated. That is not coincidence. That is alignment. Catching up to preparation. Because there comes a point where what has been built internally begins to activate externally. And that activation does not require you to chase it. It begins to meet you. But here is something you need to understand clearly, because this is where many misunderstand what is happening. When things begin to shift in your favor, it does not mean resistance disappears completely. In fact, there is often a moment where resistance intensifies right before it loses its hold. Not because it is gaining strength, but because it is losing access. And what you have experienced in the past, the confusion, the discouragement, the repeated cycles that tried to keep you in the same place, those were not random challenges. They were attempts to delay what was already in motion for you. There were thoughts that tried to convince you that nothing would change. There were situations that tried to reinforce the idea that you were limited. There were moments where everything felt heavy at the same time, as if progress itself was being resisted. But you are still here. You did not fold under that weight. You did not disappear into that pressure. You continued even when you did not have full clarity. And that matters more than you realize. Because endurance is what carries you through the stage where nothing makes sense into the stage where everything begins to align. That is why Philippians chapter 1 verse 6 carries so much weight in this moment. It reminds us that what was started will be completed, not might be, not possibly, but will be, and that completion is not dependent on perfect circumstances. It is dependent on a process that has already been set in motion. You are not waiting for something to begin. You are stepping into something that is already underway. And this is why the shift feels different now. Because you are no longer at the beginning of transformation. You are past the point where it can be reversed. There is no version of you that can comfortably return to who you used to be. Even if you tried, it would not feel right. It would not hold. Because too much has already changed. You have crossed a threshold internally. And once that threshold is crossed, everything begins to respond to it. Opportunities begin to align differently. People begin to show up differently. Even the way situations unfold begins to carry a different energy. Not because the world suddenly changed, but because you did. And when you change, your environment eventually follows. You may also begin to notice that certain things are coming into your awareness more clearly. Ideas that once felt distant now feel actionable. Paths that once seemed uncertain now feel possible. There is a growing sense that you're not guessing your next step, you are recognizing it. That is clarity being restored. And clarity always comes after confusion has done its work. Because confusion forces you to question what you once accepted without thought. It disrupts automatic patterns. It pushes you to look deeper, to seek understanding beyond what is visible. And once that process completes, clarity returns in a way that is stronger, more grounded, and more aligned. That is where you are now. You are beginning to see differently, and seeing differently leads to moving differently. But as this continues, there is something important you must be aware of. Because as alignment increases, so does the importance of what you agree with internally. Not everything that enters your thoughts deserves your agreement. Not every voice deserves your attention, especially now. There will be moments where doubt tries to reintroduce itself. Thoughts that question whether this change is real, whether it will last, whether you are truly capable of stepping into what you are beginning to see. Those thoughts are not new. They are familiar patterns attempting to regain influence. But they no longer have the same authority they once did, because you have seen too much now. You have felt the shift too clearly to dismiss it completely. And that is why your response matters. Because what you agree with internally will either strengthen your alignment or delay it. You are no longer in a place where you can afford to treat your thoughts casually. You are in a place where your awareness has increased, which means your responsibility to guard that awareness has increased as well. You cannot entertain limitation and expect expansion at the same time. You cannot agree with doubt and walk fully in clarity. This is the moment where you begin to respond differently, not by force, but by recognition. Recognizing what aligns with where you are going and what does not. Recognizing what builds and what breaks. Recognizing what belongs in your next level and what cannot come with you. And as you begin to respond with that level of awareness, something powerful begins to happen. Your alignment stabilizes. It stops feeling temporary. It becomes consistent. And once it becomes consistent, manifestation follows naturally. Not forced, not rushed, but aligned. Because what has been forming behind the scenes is now moving into position, and what is moving into position is not just change, it is confirmation. But before that confirmation becomes undeniable, there is one final layer you need to understand. Because as things begin to open, as clarity increases, as alignment strengthens, there is also a final test that often appears, not to stop you, but to reveal whether you truly recognize who you are becoming. That final layer does not come in the form most people expect. It does not always look like an obvious obstacle or a dramatic moment. Instead, it often appears quietly, almost subtly disguised as familiar thoughts, familiar fears, or situations that resemble what you've already overcome. And, if you are not aware, you might mistake it for a setback, when in reality it is a confirmation. Chosen one. There is always a moment before full emergence where your identity is tested not by external pressure alone, but by internal agreement. This is the moment where everything you have learned, everything you have shifted, everything that has been rebuilt within you is brought into focus, not to challenge your worth, but to reveal your alignment. Because it is one thing to feel transformation beginning, it is another thing to stand in it when it is questioned. And that is what this phase brings. You may notice thoughts returning that sound familiar. Not because they are true, but because they are old. Thoughts that remind you of your past, that try to redefine you by who you used to be instead of who you are becoming. You may hear that internal voice asking, who do you think you are to step into something greater? Who do you think you are to move differently, to expect more, to carry authority? That voice is not new, but your response must be, because you are no longer the version of yourself that agreed with it. And this is where many people hesitate, not because they are not ready, but because they are unfamiliar with standing in their new identity. It feels different, it feels exposed, it feels like stepping into something that doesn't match the way others have known you. But understand this clearly. Transformation is not validated by comfort. It is validated by alignment, and alignment will often require you to stand firm in who you are becoming before anyone else recognizes it. There may also be external moments that mirror this internal test, situations that look like old patterns trying to reintroduce themselves, people who approach you with the same energy that once influenced you, opportunities that resemble what you used to accept but now feel slightly off. These are not coincidences. They are reflections designed to show you how much you have actually changed, because the old patterns will only continue if you respond the same way you used to. But if your response is different, if your awareness is active, if your boundaries are clear, then the pattern cannot sustain itself. It breaks. And when it breaks, it confirms that you are no longer operating at that level. This is why this phase matters so much. Because it is not about avoiding challenges. It is about recognizing that the challenges no longer have the same authority over you. You are not being pulled back. You are being asked to stand forward. And that requires a different kind of confidence, not the kind that is loud or performative, but the kind that is grounded, steady, and rooted in truth. The kind that does not need validation to remain stable, the kind that understands who it is without needing to prove it. That is the confidence that is forming in you. And it is forming because you have already gone through what most people would have used as an excuse to stop. You have already faced uncertainty, already endured pressure, already navigated moments where nothing made sense. And instead of breaking, you adapted, you adjusted, you continued. That is not accidental, that is preparation. And now that preparation is being revealed through your response. Through the way you think, the way you choose, the way you carry yourself in situations that once would have shaken you. You may not even realize how much you have changed until you encounter something that used to affect you, and suddenly it does not hold the same weight. That moment, that shift in response, is evidence that something within you has been rebuilt, not temporarily, but permanently. And this is where your authority begins to stabilize, because authority is not given to potential. It is given to identity that has been tested and proven. You are no longer reacting from insecurity. You are responding from awareness. And that changes everything. It changes how you move, how you decide, how you interpret what is happening around you. You are no longer easily influenced by external pressure because your internal foundation has been strengthened. You recognize what aligns and what does not. You feel what is right and what is not. And most importantly, you trust that recognition. That trust is what carries you into the next stage. Because once you stop questioning every step, once you stop doubting every shift, once you begin to move with clarity instead of hesitation, something begins to open. Not all at once, but consistently. You will begin to see opportunities appear in ways you did not expect. Not forced, not chased, but aligned. You will notice connections forming naturally, conversations leading somewhere without effort, doors opening that once felt completely closed. And it will not feel chaotic, it will feel precise. Because when you operate from alignment, you do not have to force outcomes. Outcomes begin to meet you where you are. This is what happens when identity stabilizes. When you are no longer trying to become something, but are instead walking in what has already been established within you. And as this continues, there is a noticeable shift that takes place, not just in your circumstances, but in how others perceive you. Not because you're trying to present yourself differently, but because your presence carries something different now. There is a weight to it, a clarity to it, an energy that people cannot always explain, but they can feel. And that is when you begin to realize that the transformation is no longer just internal, it is becoming visible. But as this visibility increases, there is one more thing that begins to unfold. Something that will confirm beyond doubt that what you have been experiencing is not temporary and not imagined. It is real, and it is already manifesting. The moment it becomes visible, everything begins to feel different in a way that cannot be ignored, not because your entire world changes overnight, but because the way you move through it has shifted so deeply that even familiar situations begin to respond differently to you. What once felt heavy begins to feel lighter. What once required effort begins to unfold with a sense of flow. And what once felt uncertain begins to carry a quiet confidence that does not need to be explained. Chosen one. This is where manifestation begins to take shape in ways that are undeniable, not loud, not exaggerated, but precise. You will start to notice doors opening that you did not force open, conversations aligning at the right moment, opportunities presenting themselves in ways that feel almost too perfectly timed to be coincidence. But this is not luck. This is alignment reaching expression. There is a difference between chasing outcomes and attracting outcomes, and you are no longer chasing. You are becoming the kind of person that outcomes are drawn to. This is why things feel different now, because you are no longer operating from a place of lack, trying to fill something missing. You are operating from a place of identity, and identity attracts what aligns with it. When you carry clarity, clarity creates direction. When you carry authority, authority creates access. When you carry alignment, alignment creates opportunity. And this is where you begin to see the evidence externally. People will begin to respond to you differently, even if they cannot explain why. There will be a level of respect, a level of attention, a level of recognition that was not there before. Not because you demanded it, but because your presence communicates something that words cannot fully describe. It is the result of internal transformation reaching external expression. You may even notice that certain people who once overlooked you now acknowledge you, not because they suddenly changed, but because you are no longer the same version they once perceived. And when perception changes, interaction changes. This is how transformation becomes visible, not through announcements, but through response. You will also begin to see opportunities that align with your next level of responsibility. Not just opportunities for gain, but opportunities that require you to step into a greater version of yourself. Opportunities that stretch you, that challenge you, that require you to trust what has been built within you. Because what is being released to you is not just for comfort, it is for purpose. And purpose always requires responsibility. This is where the idea of provision shifts. It is no longer about receiving for yourself alone. It is about stewarding what you receive in a way that creates impact beyond you. The resources, the connections, the access, all of it begins to align with something greater than personal success. It begins to connect to assignment. And that is when you understand why the preparation had to be so precise. Because what you are stepping into requires stability, not just ability. It requires clarity, not just opportunity. It requires identity, not just access. And all of that has been forming in you. There will also be confirmations along the way, moments that feel small on the surface but carry a deeper meaning. A conversation with someone you did not expect that speaks directly to something you have been sensing. An opportunity that appears at the exact time you needed it, even if you did not know how it would come. A door that opens after being closed for longer than you thought it would. These moments are not random. They are signals. Signals that what has been developing internally is now being recognized externally. And as these confirmations appear, your confidence will continue to grow. Not in an unstable way, but in a grounded, steady way that does not depend on constant reassurance. You will begin to trust what you feel without needing external validation for every step. That is maturity. That is alignment stabilizing. But as this continues, there is something important you must remain aware of. Because as manifestation becomes visible, the temptation to return to old patterns can still appear. Not because you want to go back, but because familiarity can feel comfortable even when it is no longer aligned. You may feel moments where the old mindset tries to resurface, where the old habits try to reintroduce themselves, where the old way of thinking attempts to pull your focus back to what was instead of what is. But now you recognize it. You see it for what it is. And recognition removes its power. Because once you're aware of something, it can no longer control you in the same way. This is why your awareness has been so important throughout this process. Because awareness is what allows you to choose differently, to respond differently, to move differently even when faced with familiar patterns. And your response is what determines your consistency, because transformation is not proven by a single moment. It is proven by sustained alignment, by continuing to choose what aligns even when it is not the easiest option, by continuing to trust what you have learned even when external circumstances are still catching up, by continuing to move forward without needing to go back for reassurance. And as you maintain that consistency, something becomes clear. This is not temporary. This is not a phase. This is a shift in identity that cannot be undone. You are not returning to who you were. You are expanding into who you are, and that expansion will continue to reveal itself in ways that confirm everything you have been sensing. But there is still one final step that completes this process. Not externally, but internally. A step that solidifies everything that has been built and aligns your voice with what has already been established over your life. Because what has been forming within you now requires agreement. And that agreement will determine how fully you step into what has already been released. That agreement is not a passive thought. It is not something you quietly consider and move on from. It is a decision, a declaration, a moment where what has been forming within you is acknowledged by you. Because up until now, much of this process has happened without your full awareness. You felt it, you experienced it, you responded to it. But now you are being invited to recognize it and stand in it intentionally. Chosen one, anointed one. There comes a point where transformation must be sealed by agreement. Not because heaven needs your permission, but because alignment requires your participation. What has been prepared for you cannot be fully expressed through you until you accept it as yours. Not partially, not conditionally, but fully. And this is where many hesitate. Not because they do not want the next level, but because stepping into it requires releasing the last attachment to who they used to be. It requires letting go of the identity that was built around struggle, around limitation, around survival. It requires accepting that you are no longer defined by what you have been through, but by what you have been prepared for. That is not always easy, because for a long time your past felt like proof. Proof of what you could not do, what did not work, what did not last. But now, that same past is being redefined. It is no longer evidence of limitation. It is evidence of preparation. Every moment, every challenge, every season that tested you has contributed to the version of you that is now emerging. And that version requires agreement. You cannot fully step into something you are still questioning. You cannot walk in identity while still negotiating with doubt. This is where your voice becomes important, not for others, but for yourself. Because what you declare, you reinforce. What you speak, you align with. And what you consistently agree with becomes the foundation you operate from. That is why this moment matters. Not as a performance, not as a ritual, but as a realignment of your internal position. You are no longer observing transformation. You are stepping into it. And stepping into it means you no longer speak from uncertainty. You no longer describe yourself based on old limitations. You no longer allow past definitions to shape present decisions. You begin to speak from identity even before everything externally reflects it. That is faith in motion. Not blind belief, but informed agreement with what has already been established. Because what has been spoken over your life is not temporary. It is not dependent on circumstances. It is rooted in something that does not shift with external conditions. Psalm 138 verse 8 reminds us that what has been set in motion will be fulfilled. Not partially, not eventually, but completely. And you are now standing in that completion process, not at the beginning, not at the edge, but in the movement of it. This is why you can feel it so strongly now. The clarity, the alignment, the shift in your thinking, the shift in your response, the shift in your presence. It is all pointing to the same reality. You are not who you were, and you cannot go back to being that person, even if you tried. That version has already released its hold, and what remains is what has been built in its place. Now it is time for you to stand in it, not perfectly, not without growth, but with certainty. The kind of certainty that does not come from external validation, but from internal recognition. You know something has changed. You know something is different. You know you are not seeing things the same way you used to. That knowing is enough, because it is real. And as you continue to move forward from this point, you will see more evidence of it. Not all at once, but consistently. In the way opportunities align, in the way connections form, in the way your path begins to unfold with a level of clarity that was not there before. And with each step, your confidence will strengthen, not in who you hope to become, but in who you already are. That is the difference. You are not becoming from nothing. You are revealing what has been there all along. And as this continues, the world around you will begin to respond to that revelation. Not always with understanding, not always with agreement, but with recognition. Because when identity is aligned, it cannot remain hidden. It shows, it speaks, it moves. And that is what is happening with you now. You are moving differently. You are thinking differently. You are choosing differently. And those differences will create outcomes that confirm everything you have experienced in this process. But the most important confirmation will not come from what happens around you. It will come from what you know within you, that quiet certainty that no longer needs to be explained, that grounded confidence that no longer needs to be proven, that awareness that you have stepped into something that cannot be undone. Chosen. One, this is not a temporary shift. This is a permanent transition. The version of you that once questioned everything is no longer leading. The version of you that has been built through every moment you have endured is now in position. And from this point forward, you do not move as someone trying to find direction. You move as someone who recognizes it. You do not speak as someone hoping for change. You speak as someone who is aligned with it. You do not wait for confirmation. You walk as confirmation. Because what has begun in you is not stopping. It is not slowing. It is not reversing. It is unfolding exactly as it was meant to. And the person you are becoming is no longer something in the distance. It is who you are now, stepping into fully, completely, and without return. Chosen one. Anointed one. This is your Kairos moment, a divinely appointed time that heaven has already prepared for you to step into. What has been spoken over your life is no longer distant. It is unfolding now, quietly, steadily, and with precision beyond what you can yet see. You are not leaving this message the same way you entered it. Something has aligned, something has awakened, and even now, behind what is visible, paths are being arranged, doors are being positioned, and connections are being set in place for your next season. You do not have to force it, you only have to remain aligned with it. Walk forward in peace, not pressure. Move with clarity, not confusion. Let your thoughts, your words, and your actions begin to reflect who you now know you are. Because the version of you that has been revealed in this moment is not temporary. It is your true identity coming into full expression. If this word has settled in your spirit, write Amen in the comments as a seal of agreement, not for others, but as a declaration within yourself. And if you feel led, stay connected here so you do not miss the next message meant for your journey. Go forward with confidence, chosen. 1. What has begun will be completed, and what is unfolding will not be stopped. Peace, favor, and divine alignment go with you now.